The boutique smelled like roses and static. Every inch of it shimmered, soft chandeliers, endless mirrors, lace cascading from racks like spilled champagne. My sister, Marissa, stood in the center of it all, her white gown hugging her frame as if stitched from privilege itself. I stood beside her, holding a clutch of pearl pins the seamstress had handed me. I wasn't really needed here, just for moral support, as Mom had said. But moral support had never been my strong suit when it came to Marissa. "Careful. Don't drop those," she said sharply, her tone cutting through the boutique's gentle hum of violins. "These are Swarovski, not the cheap ones you use for whatever you sew." I swallowed the instinct to respond. My fingers tightened around the pins. It was always this way with her, her voice a mix of sugar and poison, always served with a smile that looked perfect in photographs. The seamstress stepped back, murmuring, "Beautiful fit, Miss Marissa. Just a few final stitches." Mom beamed from her velvet seat near the mirror. "Our baby girl looks like a dream. Our. Funny word. Considering only one of us had been treated like one. The last time I'd been called beautiful by our mother, I was 12 and wearing one of Marissa's hand-me-downs to a school recital. Since then, I'd been the practical one, the reliable one, the one who worked 2 jobs to pay for art school while Marissa majored in influencing and landed herself a tech millionaire, fiancé who posted love quotes under every photo she uploaded. I should have been numb by now. But watching her twirl, veil glinting in the boutique lights, I felt that familiar sting, not of envy, but of being written out of my own family's story. Marissa caught my gaze in the mirror. "You look tired, Claire. You should try concealer or something. The cameras are going to be everywhere at the wedding." "Didn't realize I was in it," I murmured. Her reflection smiled, sharp and bright. "Oh, you're not in the main photos, obviously. But family background shots matter. Just trying to help." The seamstress excused herself to fetch a new spool of thread, leaving us momentarily alone in the glowing silence. That's when Marissa leaned in closer, adjusting her veil. "You know, it's funny," she said softly, eyes never leaving her reflection. "Remember when you told Dad you'd be something big one day? That you'd make a name for yourself in art? I guess things didn't really pan out, huh?" The pins in my hand trembled. "Marissa, it's fine. Not everyone gets to have a spotlight moment. Some of us are just background people." I turned to walk away, to breathe, to not say something I couldn't take back. But as I moved past her, her elbow jerked suddenly. Maybe it was deliberate, maybe not. But the edge of her diamond bracelet sliced across my forearm, and a sharp pain bloomed, sudden and hot. I gasped and dropped the pins. Blood welled up in a neat, cruel line. "Oh my God, Claire, are you serious?" She laughed, not even looking directly at me. "It's a scratch." "Don't be dramatic." The words hit harder than the cut. Mom glanced up only when I pressed a tissue against my arm. "What happened now?" "She got a little scratch, that's all," Marissa said, waving dismissively. She's always been sensitive. The boutique's mirrors reflected me from every angle. A woman standing in a storm of lace and laughter, holding her own blood like a secret. I wanted to shout. To tell Mom that it wasn't just a scratch, that this had been years in the making. Every jab, every comparison, every dinner conversation that turned into a stage for Marissa's applause and my invisibility. But all I could manage was silence. "Maybe I should go," I said softly. Mom barely looked up from her phone. "Don't make it a scene, Claire. This is Marissa's moment." Of course it was. It was always Marissa's moment, so I left. I walked out into the sharp afternoon sunlight, arm stinging, chest hollow. The tissue had already soaked through, little red dots marking my skin. I tossed it in the trash outside and stared at my reflection in the boutique window, the glass turning my face ghostly and distant. Behind it, I could still see Marissa posing in her gown, radiant and untouchable. Something inside me twisted, quiet but powerful. It wasn't just anger. It was the deep, ancient ache of someone who'd been humiliated one too many times, and realized, suddenly, they would never let it happen again. That night, Back in my apartment, I cleaned the wound in silence. My phone buzzed with notifications, a family group chat filled with photos from the fitting. Everyone's comments, "She's glowing. So happy for you, Marissa. Can't wait for the big day." Not one mention of me. I set the phone face down on the counter. The wound had stopped bleeding, but something darker had begun to pulse beneath it. Steady. Certain. Let her have her fairy tale, I thought. For now. Because fairy tales have a way of ending. And sometimes it only takes one person to write the final line. The hum of my refrigerator was the only sound in the apartment. It was almost midnight, and I was sitting at the kitchen counter, watching the thin red line on my arm where Marissa's bracelet had cut me. The skin had sealed now, but it still burned, as if my body refused to let it heal. I'd replayed the scene from the boutique 100 times since leaving. Her smirk, the laughter, Mom's disinterest. Every time I thought I'd let it go, another wave of humiliation rolled over me, sharper, louder. My phone buzzed again. I flipped it over. Marissa. Hope you're not mad. You know how sensitive you get. Anyway, the pictures turned out amazing. Can't wait for you to see the full album. Attached were 4 photos. In one, she stood in the center, radiant in her dress, surrounded by Mom and her bridesmaids. I wasn't in a single frame. I stared at the images until my eyes stung. Then I hit delete. It wasn't just the dress fitting. It was everything. The years of being sidelined. The patronizing sympathy when my art studio failed. The family gatherings where my name was barely mentioned unless it was to highlight what I hadn't achieved. And now, being laughed at for bleeding, something in me began to harden. I opened my laptop, not entirely sure why, just to do something that wasn't sitting in the dark. The glow from the screen cast a pale blue light over the apartment. I scrolled through my email, then paused when I saw the old shared folder Marissa had sent weeks ago. Wedding plans. Curiosity pulled me in. Inside were spreadsheets, vendor lists, contracts, even links to the private wedding website she'd built, complete with RSVP lists, access passwords, and event schedules. Everything was there. Every fragile, glittering detail of her perfect day. For a long minute, I just stared at it all. Then slowly, my hand found the trackpad, and an idea began to form. One I didn't fully understand yet, but one that felt electric. Revenge wasn't new to me. I'd fantasized about it before, small, harmless versions. A cutting remark, a pointed truth at dinner, but this was different, this was precision. Still, I hesitated. I closed the laptop, stood up, paced. What was I thinking? Destroy her wedding? Over a shove and a scratch? But then I remembered the laughter. The way Mom had said, "Don't make it a scene, Claire." And I realized the bleeding wasn't from the pin or the bracelet. It was from the years of being invisible. And invisibility has a breaking point. The laptop clicked open again. The wedding website had an admin login. Marissa's email was still auto-filled. She'd used the same password she always had since college. Marissa Love 1 Unbelievable. The screen blinked, then opened to the control panel. The entire $200,000 event layout was there in neat tabs. Catering orders, venue security contacts, the livestream integration, vendor payment schedules. I scrolled through line after line of her perfect life, seeing how fragile it all was. One click here, a leak there, and everything she'd built could crumble. But I didn't act. Not yet. I needed to think. I pulled out my sketch pad, the same one I used for art once, and began to jot ideas. No blood, no police. Nothing traceable. Just exposure. The truth. If I did this right, she wouldn't even know it was me until it was far too late. As I sketched, I began remembering things, little details that now felt like breadcrumbs. The wedding planner's temper tantrum over a late payment. The florist's grumbling that Marissa had canceled her last event without paying in full. The influencer she'd bragged about hiring to amplify her wedding online. There were cracks everywhere. All I had to do was widen them. By dawn, my counter was covered in scribbles, timelines, usernames, media accounts, dummy emails. The plan was crude but alive. I'd use the same platform Marissa used for her online promotions. A single scheduled post, automated and irreversible. When it launched, it would trigger a cascade. Screenshots, edited clips, whispers of scandal. Not fabricated lies, but exaggerated truths. Enough to make her perfect wedding look rotten from the inside. The first move was small. I sent a test message to an old contact from college, Jacob, a freelance digital editor who once helped me with an art exhibit video. Hey, need help with something private? Confidential job. We'll pay double. His reply came within minutes. Sure thing. Send me the brief. I leaned back in my chair. The city outside was still waking. Pale light creeping between blinds. The world indifferent to what I was about to do. I traced the faint scar on my arm again. And for the first time, it didn't sting. It pulsed, steady, like a promise. Later that morning, I opened Marissa's Instagram. She'd posted a photo of herself at brunch, captioned, "Some people just can't be happy for others." 1,000 likes in under an hour. I felt my jaw tighten, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then quietly I whispered to myself, "You wanted a perfect wedding, Marissa. Let's make it unforgettable." The cursor blinked on the screen. And in that single silent blink, the plan was born. Jacob replied with a single line that felt like permission. Send what you have. Discreet. No names if you don't want them in it. I attached a handful of files, grainy screenshots from the wedding site, a PDF of a contract that hinted at an overdue balance, a cropped message that could be read two ways. Nothing that was a lie. Every piece could be argued, but together they might look like proof. I didn't explain my motive. He didn't ask. He sent 2 short questions back. What's the tone? Brutal or subtle? Subtle, I typed, then deleted it and wrote, exposing, but not cruel. I didn't want people to say later that I'd made up something grotesque just to hurt. I wanted truth, amplified, rearranged, pointed where it would hurt the most. Jacob called within the hour. His voice sounded 5 years younger over the phone. I can make this look cinematic. A montage that implies collusion, mismanagement. Not outright falsified. Ambiguous enough that people will start asking questions. It thrilled me. And for a second I felt like an artist again, composing a piece that would disrupt the space the way a bad review disrupts a gallery opening. But even artists keep an eye on what they break. Next, I reached out to people who had reasons to be angry. Tom, the planner's former assistant, answered my message with terse curiosity and then, after a long pause, agreed to meet for coffee. He was thin and nervous, the kind of guy who still checked receipts twice. He had been fired after a misunderstanding over a deposit. He blamed Marissa's planner for scapegoating him. He told me stories, private emails he'd saved, a voicemail where the planner sounded panicked about covering costs. He wanted nothing to do with public shaming, but wanted his side heard. I promised his anonymity. Promises felt dangerous now, like fragile bridges. Luca, the florist, I found through an old vendor listing. He'd paid for a bulk order of rare blooms that Marissa had canceled 2 weeks before. He hadn't been reimbursed. When I showed him the draft of an invoice I'd pulled from an old email chain, one that made it look like a payment had been promised and then quietly redirected, his face went pale. He didn't ask where I'd found it. He only asked for help in recovering what he was owed. I told him what I could, that I was trying to make people pay attention. He agreed to speak up if it could save his small shop. A bartender named Maya, who'd worked a rehearsal dinner Marissa had blown off without tipping, wanted only to be acknowledged. She left me with a mess, she said. If people knew how she treated Cruz, maybe she'd stop treating everyone like it's disposable. Her anger was cleaner than mine, directed, not corrosive. I never asked for confessions. Nobody wanted to be the villain. They wanted restitution, or at least the chance to be heard. I stitched their grievances into my plan like a tailor laying a lining into a gown, hidden, necessary, part of the structure. Jacob started sending rough cuts. He worked in quick, imperfect edits that blurred the line between fact and insinuation. A text message that, when placed beside a vendor complaint, suggested dodged responsibility. A cropped ledger that, when juxtaposed with a smiling wedding photo, hinted at vanity masking mismanagement. He added audio, a clipped voicemail from the planner sounding thinner than the person we'd once met in public. The montage wasn't an accusation in itself, more a suggestion that something behind the sparkle was rotten. But the more I watched the pieces come together, the more I heard the small human cracks that accompanied them. Jacob asked once, hesitantly, "You're sure you want this to go out on the live stream? People will see it in real time. The venue, the guests, it'll be chaos." His voice held a question that wasn't technical, it was moral. I didn't answer immediately. He left the question hanging, and it sat like a stone in my throat. At night, alone with the clips and the files, I replayed old memories that had nothing to do with contracts. The scar on my arm flashed under my sleeve. I remembered Marissa at 8, bridging the gap when I was frozen on the playground, when other kids had called me strange. I remembered making her a birthday card in the 3rd grade and watching her pretend to love it, then tucking it away when a new, shinier gift arrived. The list of small cruelties was long, and they stacked until they weren't small anymore. Still, confrontation with that past felt different now that I had adults' tools and the internet's reach. The thought that I might ruin livelihoods, that a florist might lose customers, a planner might be shamed into bankruptcy, followed me like a persistent shadow. The allies I'd assembled had their own stakes. Tom wanted the planner to be held accountable. Luca wanted his payment. Maya wanted an apology and the dignity to be treated fairly again. Jacob wanted a compelling piece. None of them wanted unnecessary collateral damage. "Make it surgical," Luca said over our last call. "Cut to the rot, not the people." I tried to make that my credo. Surgical, precise, not cruel. But the nearer we came to the release, to the scheduled post that would ripple across the live stream and influencer channels, the more I felt the old animal part of me awake, hungry for a justice that would never undo the years I'd been invisible. We rehearsed the release in hushed digital rehearsals. Jacob's edit cued. Accounts lined up to amplify it. Anonymous whispers seeded into comment threads to encourage screenshots and replays. It wasn't complicated, but it was inevitable once you decided you would no longer be silent. On the morning I chose the Go Live window, I sat on my couch with coffee gone cold and Jacob's rough cut open on my laptop. He'd left one scene too long, a close-up of Marissa laughing, the exact smile that had been at the boutique the day she cut me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I watched her laugh as if it were a separate person, someone who'd been living in a glass house for years. I could still stop. Delete the account, call the people back, apologize to Luca and Tom and Maya and Jacob, walk away and let the wound on my arm be the only thing that mattered. But when I pressed play one more time, the montage folded itself around my memory and made that laughter look brittle, like a painted prop. I closed the laptop, hand on the mouse. My finger hovered above the button that would send Jacob's final file into the scheduled queue. A procedural, quiet click that would, in minutes, echo into a hall full of people who believed in fairy tales. The apartment was silent except for the distant sounds of the city getting on with its day, innocent and indifferent. My pulse beat in my throat like a drum. I thought of Marissa's face, the exact moment she had laughed at my blood. I thought of Luca counting unpaid invoices. I thought of Tom, hands trembling as he read a message perhaps for the first time in years. My finger trembled, then steadied. I set it down. The plan was ready. The timing was set. All that remained was the single act that would turn the montage into motion. The click. And with that, the story moves to the moment when the button is pressed, when the wedding's perfect world collapses in real time. The morning of Marissa's wedding broke warm and impossibly blue. Sunlight poured through my blinds, thick and golden, the kind of light that should have meant peace. But the air in my apartment felt sharp, electrified. I'd barely slept. Every tick of the clock on my kitchen wall felt louder, closer, like a countdown I couldn't mute. The plan was set to trigger at 2 p.m. just as the ceremony's live stream would begin. Everything I had prepared was sitting quietly on a server, waiting. All I had to do was log in and give the command that would wake it. At 11 a.m., I showered and dressed as if it were any other day. Jeans, soft sweater, nothing remarkable. My reflection in the mirror looked calm, detached, but I could feel the tremor in my fingers. I made coffee, poured half of it down the sink. I checked my laptop again, verifying that the timed upload was still scheduled, that the cache files were properly encrypted. Jacob's final message blinked at the top of my inbox. Once you click activate, there's no undo. Just make sure this is really what you want. Below that, a string of supportive texts from Maya and Luca. Short, nervous affirmations that didn't quite disguise their own unease. Tom hadn't written at all. I told myself it was fine. It had to be. At 1:45, I opened the wedding's private stream on my second screen. The feed came alive, a blur of pastel gowns, white roses, soft violin music looping like a lullaby. Marissa was radiant, just as she always was. Her dress shimmered in the sunlight filtering through the massive church windows. Every camera adored her. Mom was seated in the front row, dabbing her eyes. The groom stood near the altar, tall, handsome, clearly nervous. Everything looked perfect, like a fairy tale I'd never been cast in. The comments on the side of the stream flooded fast. Heart emojis. Congratulations. Marissa and Logan forever. At 1:59, I glanced at the time. My cursor hovered over the activate button. For a second, my mind split in two, one part watching the ceremony, the other replaying the fitting, her laughter, my blood, Mom's dismissal. My hand moved on its own. A click so small, almost silent. Then, the world began to shift. The first sign was subtle, a flicker in the live feed, a quick pixel glitch that made the violin music stutter. The camera panned across the guests, and then the screen cut. The stream darkened for half a second, then lit again. But it wasn't the ceremony anymore. Jacob's montage had started. At first, no one seemed to realize it wasn't part of the broadcast. The footage began innocently, Marissa laughing, adjusting her veil, twirling in the boutique mirror. Then came overlays of text messages, invoices, screenshots flashing too quickly to read, but clear enough to suggest deceit. Unpaid vendors, secret arguments, whispered arrogance. The chat exploded. Wait, what is this? Is this part of the show? Oh my God, this is live? The violin music warped into silence. The camera feed abruptly returned to the ceremony, but the damage was already spreading. Guests were pulling out their phones, whispering. The live stream's audience count surged from hundreds to thousands. Someone clipped the montage and uploaded it to X within 60 seconds. The algorithm took it from there. Marissa's scandal started trending before she could even reach the altar. On screen, I watched her falter mid-step. The officiant tried to continue, voice trembling. Her fiancé leaned toward her, confusion etched on his face. Her father's hand went to his chest as murmurs swelled through the pews. And then someone, maybe a guest, maybe an assistant, yelled, "Turn off the screens!" But it was too late. Every guest's phone was already lit. The whispers became accusations. The planner stormed down the aisle, shouting for the livestream operator. Cameras wobbled, the feed broke again, and then it was chaos. Shouts, cries, a bouquet hitting the floor. I sat frozen. I'd imagined satisfaction. I'd expected adrenaline. But what I felt was something else entirely. Hollow awe. The montage was still playing in fragments online, endlessly looped. Clips, screenshots, side-by-side comparisons. Jacob's careful editing had turned it into a storm, and now it had no owner, no brakes. My phone buzzed violently on the table. "Mom, what did you do?" "What did you do to your sister?" Then another, unknown. "You should be ashamed. Everyone knows it was you, how?" "How did they know so fast?" I turned off notifications and leaned forward, staring at the frozen live stream frame. Marissa standing in the middle of the aisle, surrounded by phones, cameras, whispers. Her lips were moving, but no sound came through. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. In the background, the groom's mother stood up, her face tight with fury. The guests started filing out in small waves, some confused, others openly recording. The officiant tried to regain order. Marissa's expression cracked. Not rage, not yet, just confusion. Hurt. The same raw shock I'd felt in that boutique when she laughed at my pain. Only now, it was her turn to bleed. Publicly, digitally, permanently. I closed my laptop. The silence in my apartment roared. By nightfall, the internet had eaten the story alive. Headlines multiplied. $200,000 wedding livestream hijacked by exposing video. Comment sections became battlegrounds. Strangers debated whether Marissa had it coming, whether she was a fraud, whether the anonymous leaker was a hero or a sociopath. I scrolled through every word until I couldn't anymore. My eyes burned. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. On my kitchen counter, next to the closed laptop, sat the wedding invitation Marissa had mailed me months ago. Gold foil, perfect font. I picked it up, ran my finger along the embossed letters. For a long time, I didn't move. Then, quietly, I whispered, "It's done." But the words didn't sound like victory. They sounded like something breaking, and somewhere, under the noise of the world, I realized, the moment I'd clicked that button, I hadn't just destroyed her wedding. I'd destroyed the last fragile thread connecting us at all. The next morning, sunlight still found its way into my apartment, but it felt wrong, intrusive. I hadn't slept. My laptop sat closed on the coffee table, like a loaded weapon that had already gone off. The news hadn't stopped. Every scroll brought another headline. Every app showed another angle of the chaos I'd unleashed. The internet didn't sleep, didn't breathe, didn't forgive. Marissa's scandal had become her wedding from hell overnight. Clips of her crying, her father arguing with guests, even the groom walking out of the church. They were everywhere. I watched one video of her screaming at the camera crew to stop filming. Her voice broke halfway through, turning into a raw sob that made my stomach twist. For a second, I didn't recognize her. My sister, the woman who once brushed my hair before prom, who used to steal my sweaters, who used to call me Clary Bug. Now just a headline. Around noon, someone knocked on my door, hard. When I opened it, Mom was standing there. Her face was pale and swollen from crying. Behind her, the hallway light glared against her tears. "You," she said, voice trembling. "You did this." I didn't answer. She stepped inside without asking, clutching her purse like she needed something to hold on to. "Do you have any idea what you've done to her? To us?" I started, but she cut me off. "She what? Hurt your feelings?" "Claire, she was your sister. You ruined her life!" The words hit like stones. "She ruined mine years ago," I said quietly. "You just never noticed." Mom's lips parted, but no words came. She looked around my apartment like she was seeing it for the first time. Small, cluttered, lonely. "She's in the hospital," she said finally. Shock. Logan's family called off the wedding. The vendors are threatening lawsuits. The church was vandalized overnight. People are sending death threats to her house. Her voice cracked. "And you think this was justice?" The silence that followed was unbearable. My throat tightened. I wanted to say something. Anything. But the words just wouldn't form. Mom turned to leave, pausing at the door. "You think you won, Claire?" "You didn't. You lost the last person who would have ever forgiven you." Then she was gone. That night, I didn't turn on any lights. The glow from my laptop screen was enough. Notifications, messages, tags. "Maya, you okay? You seeing all this? It's getting out of hand. Luca, people are calling you a legend online. But some are digging. Someone's leaking your name, Claire. You need to delete everything. Jacob, they traced the upload to one of my proxies. You need to lie low, now." I closed the messages, but my chest felt like it was caving in. The internet was already starting to speculate. Threads dissecting the timing, the footage. The Mystery Insider. One tweet read, "Notice how the leaker knew exactly which boutique fitting to use? Must have been someone close." And just like that, my name was out. 2 days later, I couldn't walk to the corner store without feeling eyes on me. The cashier glanced twice before saying, "You look familiar." By the time I got home, someone had written "monster" in chalk on the sidewalk outside my building. The world was feeding on my secret, and the secret had grown teeth. On the third day, I drove to the hospital. I didn't even know why. Maybe guilt, maybe hope. When I reached her room, the nurse hesitated before letting me in. "She's fragile," she warned. Marissa was sitting up in bed, pale and exhausted, her makeup washed away. Her left hand trembled as she held a cup of water. When she saw me, her lips tightened. I expected her to scream or cry or throw something. But she didn't. She just stared. Finally, she whispered, "You did it, didn't you?" I didn't answer. She let out a breath that sounded more like a laugh, brittle and small. "You destroyed me, Claire." My throat burned. "You destroyed me first." Her eyes flashed. "You think humiliation equals pain? You think you know what suffering is?" I wanted to tell her about that day in the boutique, the blood, her laughter, Mom's words. But as I looked at her, the IV line, the dark circles under her eyes, it all felt distant, pointless. "I wanted you to understand," I said instead. She turned her face away. "I do now. You're everything you said I was." Those words stayed in the air long after she closed her eyes. That night, I deleted the backup files. Every folder, every image, every script Jacob had helped me write. Watching them disappear should have felt like release, but it didn't. It just left a hole. The internet moved on within a week. Another scandal, another viral meltdown. But in my world, the quiet never came back. Mom stopped answering my calls. My friends grew distant. Even Jacob said we should take some space. And Marissa? She left town. Deleted all her accounts. The wedding that was supposed to make her a star became a ghost story whispered about online. Sometimes, late at night, I still scroll through the screenshots, not out of pride, but because I can't stop reliving the moment before I clicked activate, the second before everything changed. Revenge, I learned, doesn't end with a click. It lingers, in the silence, in the guilt, in the echo of your own heartbeat. Because once you destroy someone, a part of you stays buried in the wreckage too. 3 months had passed. Autumn had crept in quietly, brushing the city with that cool, lonely sort of beauty. Fallen leaves on sidewalks, gray mornings, the smell of rain on brick. I'd almost forgotten what silence sounded like. After the wedding scandal, I lost my job at the design firm. "We can't have someone with that kind of media attention," they'd said politely, like they were doing me a favor. My inbox turned to dust. My phone barely buzzed anymore. The internet had moved on. But my name still floated in the corners of forgotten threads. Whispers in group chats, little scars across the web that would never fade. I told myself I didn't care, that it was worth it. But every night, when I lay awake in the dark, I'd hear her voice again. Marissa's last words in that hospital room. "You're everything you said I was." And it hit me differently each time. One evening, I walked past a bridal boutique downtown, a new one. The mannequins glowed softly under warm lights, their dresses white and untouched. I froze. That was where it had all started. Not this exact shop, but one just like it. The satin, the mirrors, the laughter that had cut deeper than any blade. For a moment, I saw my reflection in the window. Hollow-eyed, hair pulled back in a messy bun, a woman I barely recognized. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd been the bride, and I'd become the ghost a week later. I got a call I didn't expect. "Claire?" The voice was small, cautious. I almost didn't recognize it. "Marissa?" There was a long pause. I could hear the soft hum of background noise, maybe a cafe or a car radio. "I'm in town," she said. "I need to talk." I almost hung up. But something, maybe guilt, maybe the faint memory of sisterhood, stopped me. We met at a park cafe the next morning. She arrived wearing sunglasses and a long coat, her hair darker, shorter. She looked like someone trying to disappear. Neither of us spoke for a while. The air between us felt fragile, like a bubble that could burst at any word. Finally, she said, "You know they think I leaked my own wedding?" For attention. Sponsors pulled out. Logan's family still won't talk to me. I didn't mean for it to. I stopped, realizing how empty those words sounded. She gave a bitter laugh. Didn't mean for it to what? Go too viral? I flinched. Her tone softened a little. I know you were hurt, Claire. And maybe I deserved some of it. But you didn't just get even. You erased me. Her hands trembled slightly around her coffee cup. Do you have any idea what it's like to wake up and realize the entire world saw you break? I swallowed hard. Do you have any idea what it's like to spend your whole life being invisible to the people who were supposed to love you? She didn't answer. For a moment, all we could do was sit in the weight of everything unsaid. Then softly, she said, I wanted you in my wedding, you know. Really in it. But every time I tried to include you, it felt like you didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be your decoration, I said. And I didn't know how to be your sister without turning it into a competition, she admitted. Mom always compared us. You were the artist, the sensitive one. I was the achiever. They made us this way, her voice cracked. But what you did, it killed more than the wedding. It killed everything that was left of us. I didn't realize I was crying until she reached across the table and handed me a napkin. I know, I whispered. And I wish I could undo it. She nodded slowly. You can't. But you can stop pretending it was justice. The wind rustled between us, carrying away the last of our anger, leaving only the raw truth. After a long silence, she stood up. I'm leaving the country for a while. I need to start over. I nodded. You should. She looked at me, not with hatred, but with something colder. Acceptance. Take care of yourself. Claire. Then she walked away. That night, I sat by the window, watching the city lights blur through my tears. I opened my laptop one last time, not to destroy, but to build. A blank page stared back at me. For the first time in years, I opened my old art software. Lines, colors, shapes, quiet. I painted a scene of two women standing in opposite light, one in gold, one in gray, each reaching out, their fingertips just missing. When I finished, I uploaded it anonymously with the caption, "We both burned and learned how to see in the dark." It got 3 likes, then 10, then 50, but I didn't care about the numbers. For once, I wasn't seeking an audience. I was seeking peace. Months later, a small art blog reached out asking to feature my piece. The writer said, "There's something hauntingly human about this, like forgiveness trying to find a home." Forgiveness. I wasn't sure I'd ever fully find it. But maybe that was okay. Some stories don't end with redemption, just quiet understanding. I never saw Marissa again. But sometimes, when I walk past a bridal store window, I imagine she's out there somewhere. Rebuilding, breathing, healing. And me? I'm learning to do the same. Revenge gave me a moment of power. But forgiveness, even if it's only for myself, gave me something stronger. A reason to start over, because in the end, destruction might feel like freedom. But creation is what truly sets you free. The small coastal town was nothing like the city. No noise, no rush, no ghosts that whispered my name. I moved here 3 years ago, after selling the last of my old apartment furniture and packing what was left of my life into 2 boxes. The ocean had always been my escape, but now it had become my home. Most mornings, I sit on the back porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over the water. I still paint. Not for galleries, not for followers, but for myself. The kind of art that doesn't need to be understood. My latest piece hangs above the fireplace, 2 sisters standing on opposite sides of a cracked mirror. The reflection doesn't match, but both faces are calm, whole. Sometimes I still think of Marissa. I don't check her social media. I don't even know if she still has any. But once, about a year ago, I got a postcard. No name, no return address, just a watercolor of a seaside chapel and 3 words written on the back. We made it. I didn't need to ask what she meant. Maybe she's forgiven me. Maybe she hasn't. But the truth is, forgiveness isn't something you wait for. It's something you grow into. I've stopped trying to erase the past. It's part of me, the mistakes, the fire, the lesson. The girl who destroyed her sister's wedding doesn't exist anymore. But she taught me something I could never learn any other way. That pain doesn't vanish through revenge. It dissolves through understanding. The tide comes in, gentle and steady. I close my eyes and let the sound fill the quiet. For the first time in years, I don't feel haunted. I just feel alive. And as the morning light stretches across the sea, I whisper softly to no one in particular. We both made it.